The war that ended in 1945 did not truly end. It receded into silence, its echoes buried beneath stone bunkers, waterlogged archives, and sealed vaults scattered across the ruins of Europe and Asia. Official histories declared closure, but within intelligence agencies and forgotten naval depots, a darker truth endured, stitched together by missing files and intercepted transmissions that were never meant to surface. Declassified fragments reveal that beneath the known battles, Stalingrad, Midway, Normandy, lay other campaigns, hidden, unacknowledged, and designed to vanish without a trace. Soviet NKVD directives marked Sever 12, Gestapo files stamped with the red wax seal of Himmler's office, and American G2 memoranda all point to a shadow war of secret transports, experimental weapons, and coded agreements between enemies sworn to destroy each other. These were not the stories of generals celebrated in textbooks, but of nameless couriers drowned in frozen fjords, of biologists whose laboratories became death chambers, of trainloads of blueprints moving silently east while Allied forces marched west. The evidence of their existence remains scattered, ship manifests without destinations, interrogation transcripts cut short by censorship, and crude sketches of tunnels that were dynamited shut before liberation forces could breach them. Each fragment reads like a warning. The war we remember was only a surface conflict, while underneath, the machinery of secrecy operated with precision. Tonight we open those files, each one marked top secret, each one once locked away under threat of treason, and each one revealing that World War II was far darker, far stranger, and far more unfinished than we were ever told. Chapter 1. The Ghost Convoy of Narvik. Fjord. The icy waters of northern Norway conceal more than rusting hulls and forgotten wreckage. In the winter of 1941, long after the initial German invasion of Norway, the Kriegsmarine began orchestrating an operation that has only recently surfaced in fragments of declassified naval records. Known within Enigma transmissions as Eisenschmied, literally Iron Smith, this operation involved a small but heavily guarded convoy that slipped away under cover of polar night from Narvik, a port already scarred by naval battles earlier in the war. To Allied eyes, the convoy seemed routine, perhaps a resupply mission to reinforce garrisons stationed across Norway's northern coast. But German file references discovered decades later in Bundesarchiv holdings tell a more chilling story. These ships carried not only stolen gold reserves taken from Norwegian banks during the occupation, but also sealed crates marked with chemical warfare insignia and overseen by SS Totenkopfverbände guards, whose presence aboard a naval convoy was itself highly irregular. The records describe special compartments welded shut, their access limited to only a handful of officers who reported directly to Berlin. What lay inside those compartments has remained the subject of decades of silence, deliberate suppression, and whispered speculation among intelligence historians. Witness accounts add to the unease. A Norwegian fisherman, whose testimony was later taken by British intelligence in 1942, described seeing the convoy vanish into heavy fog, flanked by U-boats running silent just below the surface. He claimed the sea seemed unnaturally still that night, as if the very waters resisted disturbance. When the convoy failed to reappear at any known destination, its fate was marked unknown in Kriegsmarine logs. Yet Allied codebreakers at Bletchley Park intercepted messages referring to the successful completion of Eisenschmied. The contradiction remains unresolved. German records imply disappearance, while encrypted transmissions suggest the mission reached its destination, but no destination has ever been identified. When divers from NATO attempted to investigate wrecks in Narvik Fjord during the 1970s, official reports described dangerous levels of instability in submerged munitions. Yet a classified memorandum unearthed in 1992 from NATO archives revealed another layer. Divers allegedly discovered sealed cargo containers filled with corroded chemical drums. The drums bore faded stenciling of skull and crossbones symbols and German lettering for gift gas, meaning poison gas. Before the divers could retrieve evidence, the area was cordoned off and declared permanently restricted. No independent dives were permitted afterward, leaving speculation to fester in the silence. The convoy's suspected cargo links directly to Germany's advanced chemical warfare research. Historians have long debated the extent of Nazi bioweapons development, with most evidence suppressed or destroyed in the war's final months. The discovery of documents referencing Eisenschmied suggests the Germans were transporting precursor agents northward, perhaps in preparation for deployment against Soviet forces. The Arctic offered concealment, as Allied air patrols were sparse in the region, and German U-boats operated with greater freedom in the North Sea routes. The choice of Narvik, already fortified and strategically vital for iron ore shipments, provided a perfect launching point. Yet why would chemical agents be moved north, toward frozen isolation rather than east, toward the front lines? Some theories propose that underground facilities in the Arctic Circle were prepared to house experimental weapons programs shielded from Allied bombers. Others suggest the convoy was bound for submarine transport stations, where the materials could be shipped covertly to occupied territories or even neutral countries sympathetic to the Reich. British MI6 files add another fragment. A decrypted message from January 1942 references, "The gold transport secure, the agents are satisfied." Cross-referencing this with financial records reveals that substantial amounts of Norwegian gold reserves vanished from Oslo banks in 1940, yet never appeared in Reichsbank tallies after occupation. Historians note that Swiss banks during and after the war received sudden unexplained deposits, often laundered through shell companies. Some of those deposits align with the timeframe of Eisenschmied. Could the convoy have carried not only weapons, but also stolen gold, destined to bankroll covert German operations in neutral territories? If so, the loss or deliberate disappearance of the convoy represents more than just missing ships. It hints at a financial network designed to sustain the Reich even in collapse. Perhaps the most haunting element of the story comes from Soviet naval archives opened briefly after the fall of the USSR. A report from a Soviet submarine captain patrolling the Barents Sea in early 1942 claims to have sighted German cargo vessels escorted by destroyers, moving east under blackout conditions. The report describes strange deck structures, resembling reinforced containers, never seen on typical supply convoys. The Soviet commander ordered his crew to shadow the convoy, but soon lost contact amid worsening ice conditions. His final note in the logbook reads, "The sea swallows what it wishes to conceal." That same logbook was later stamped "Do Not Distribute" by the NKVD, its contents sealed until the 1990s. Its rediscovery only deepened the mystery. Eyewitness testimony from captured German sailors taken prisoner at Murmansk further fuels speculation. During interrogations in 1943, they referenced rumors among the Kriegsmarine of a gold fleet that had been lost in the Arctic. They spoke of comrades reassigned to convoys that never returned, their names absent from official casualty rolls. One sailor described seeing SS guards aboard transports armed with flamethrowers, an unusual weapon for a naval mission. When pressed, he admitted the rumor was that these guards were not there to defend the ships from enemy attack, but to ensure that no crew members attempted to breach the sealed compartments. The implication is chilling. Whatever the cargo was, it required not only secrecy, but ruthless enforcement. The Allied silence after the war raises further questions. If the convoy truly carried chemical weapons, why was this not exposed during the Nuremberg trials? The answer may lie in Cold War pragmatism. US and Soviet forces both scrambled to seize German scientists and research under projects like Operation Paperclip. It would have been inconvenient to publicize the scale of German chemical or biological programs, especially if remnants were quietly absorbed into superpower arsenals. Declassified CIA memoranda from 1951 reference a northern cache of German materials deemed too unstable to recover. While the location is not specified, some researchers believe this refers to the remains of Eisenschmied, buried beneath the Arctic ice. Even today, Narvik Fjord remains a site of restricted diving. Local fishermen whisper of unexplained illnesses after hauling nets near certain wreck sites, while environmental surveys have noted chemical anomalies in the water. Yet official explanations cite only fuel leakage from wartime wrecks. The silence feels deliberate, echoing the way other dark wartime secrets were buried under bureaucratic classification. The convoy's disappearance has become a ghost story among naval historians, one with tangible threads leading back to chemical warfare programs, stolen gold reserves, and covert financial dealings that stretched beyond Europe. If the ghost convoy of Narvik truly carried chemical agents, the danger may not be confined to history. Corroding drums beneath polar waters could still release toxins into fragile Arctic ecosystems. If it carried stolen gold, those resources may have fueled post-war networks that allowed fugitive Nazis to escape justice. And if it carried both, then Eisenschmied represents more than just a lost mission. It is evidence of a hidden strategy, one that blended weapons, finance, and secrecy into a single operation designed to vanish into the shadows of history. The Fjord holds its silence, but the files that remain whisper of an operation the world was never meant to know. Chapter 2: Operation Harbinger and the Plague Files. In the chaotic final years of the Second World War, certain Japanese operations remained so deeply buried within secret archives that even victory did not bring them into the light. Among them was an operation codenamed Harbinger, conceived within the darkest corners of the Kwantung Army and executed under the supervision of Unit 731 in occupied Manchuria. While the Allied world celebrated triumphs at Normandy, Iwo Jima, and Berlin, Japanese scientists were preparing a silent weapon capable of striking thousands without warning. Plague-bearing fleas cultivated in laboratory vats, intended for release across enemy cities. Documents marked with the red ink seal of the Kwantung Army describe the operation with chilling precision, reducing human lives to test subjects and field data. Unlike artillery barrages or aerial bombings, Harbinger promised devastation without smoke or rubble. It promised a sickness that spread invisibly, leaving entire towns incapacitated within days. And for decades, fragments of its existence remained buried, some seized by Soviet intelligence, others absorbed into American archives during the fevered rush of post-war research acquisition. Only now, with declassified reports and survivor testimonies, does the shape of Harbinger emerge from the shadows. The origins of Harbinger can be traced to the founding of Unit 731 in 1936, under the command of General Shiro Ishii. Established under the guise of a water purification unit, the facility outside Harbin was in truth one of the most lethal biological research stations in history. Prisoners, Chinese civilians, Russian captives, and even Allied POWs were subjected to gruesome experiments. Among the most feared programs was the cultivation of Yersinia pestis, the bacterium responsible for the Black Death. Unit 731 scientists developed techniques for breeding fleas infected with the plague, storing them in ceramic bombs known as Uji-50, designed to shatter on impact and release their swarming contents. Early tests were carried out on isolated villages in Manchuria, their populations recorded in clinical detail before and after infection. Soviet intelligence files captured in 1945 note entire towns reduced to silence, the only surviving sound the buzzing of flies among abandoned huts. Operation Harbinger was envisioned as the culmination of this research. Draft planning documents recovered by Soviet forces in Harbin describe coordinated aerial strikes on Allied ports. Vladivostok, Calcutta, and even San Francisco appear on targeting lists. Fleas packed into porcelain bombs would be dropped from aircraft, contaminating food supplies, water, and human hosts alike. The documents estimate casualty projections in the millions, with the added advantage of psychological warfare. Panic spreading faster than the plague itself. Interrogations of captured Japanese officers after the war reference phase Harbinger as a contingency should Japan face imminent defeat. By late 1944, as the US island-hopping campaign closed in on the Japanese homeland, preparations for Harbinger accelerated. Facilities in Pingfang produced thousands of plague-infected fleas weekly, stored in sealed crates marked with coded serial numbers. Allied forces never uncovered evidence of their intended deployment, but the very existence of these preparations was buried under layers of silence. When Japan surrendered in August 1945, the fate of Unit 731's archives became the focus of competing intelligence agencies. Soviet forces captured much of Manchuria, seizing documents and interrogating surviving staff. Their findings were presented in the Khabarovsk war crimes trial of 1949, where testimony revealed the extent of Japanese biological experimentation. Yet Western powers dismissed the trial as propaganda, refusing to acknowledge its authenticity. What they concealed was that the United States had already struck its own bargain. Under the clandestine framework of Operation Paperclip, American intelligence shielded Ishii's top scientists from prosecution, offering them immunity in exchange for research data. Declassified CIA memoranda from 1952 reveal references to the Harbinger strain, an enhanced plague variant whose properties were studied at Fort Detrick, Maryland. Officially, the US denied all involvement. Unofficially, Harbinger had been absorbed into the Cold War's expanding arsenal. The silence surrounding Harbinger deepens when examining reports from the Korean War. In 1952, Chinese and North Korean officials accused the United States of deploying biological weapons, citing outbreaks of plague-like symptoms in remote villages. Western historians dismiss the claims as fabrications, yet a classified Soviet medical report, unearthed in the 1990s, details autopsies of civilians from the affected regions. The symptoms, swollen lymph nodes, rapid fever onset, blackened extremities, mirror those of bubonic plague. While definitive proof of American deployment remains elusive, the similarities to Harbinger's projected effects cannot be ignored. The possibility that plague research continued under new management is a shadow that lingers over post-war history. The human cost of Harbinger is etched in the testimonies of survivors. Chinese villagers who lived near Pingfang described nights when the sky filled with strange aircraft, and mornings when rats and fleas seemed unnaturally numerous. Within days, families would fall ill, coughing blood, their skin mottled with lesions. Few survived to tell the tale, and those who did were often silenced by decades of fear. In one account preserved by Chinese archives, a farmer recalled soldiers in protective suits collecting corpses with iron hooks, piling them into carts for disposal. His words were later translated in Soviet reports, though his name was redacted to protect his family. Such accounts lend a human voice to the otherwise sterile military documents, grounding Harbinger not in speculation, but in lived horror. What makes Harbinger especially haunting is the cold efficiency with which it was designed. Unlike chemical weapons, which left visible scars on battlefields, or conventional bombs, which destroyed infrastructure, Harbinger left its victims indistinguishable from natural disease outbreaks. Intelligence reports note this plausible deniability as one of its strategic advantages. In an era when germ theory was still imperfectly understood, panic alone could paralyze entire populations. For military planners, it was the perfect silent weapon. For civilians, it was an invisible terror. Even after the war, traces of Harbinger reappeared in unexpected places. In 1960, a classified US Army report mentioned historical studies of vector-based delivery systems, citing Japanese research as foundational. In the 1970s, Soviet defectors claimed their government maintained plague research programs derived from captured Harbinger files. The collapse of the USSR briefly opened windows into Biopreparat, the Soviet biological warfare agency, confirming that plague strains had indeed been cultivated well into the Cold War. Though both superpowers officially renounced biological weapons in the 1972 Biological Weapons Convention, suspicions persisted. Harbinger's shadow stretched across decades, its origins in Japanese laboratories, but its legacy carried into rival arsenals on opposite sides of the Iron Curtain. The lingering secrecy surrounding Harbinger is not merely historical. In recent decades, scattered references to the operation have surfaced in unexpected contexts. Japanese right-wing publications, attempting to sanitize wartime history, deny the existence of Unit 731 altogether, calling it a fabrication of post-war propaganda. Yet survivors and their descendants continue to demand acknowledgement. Museums in Harbin now display reconstructed artifacts from the unit, though many original documents remain classified in foreign archives. The United States, despite declassifying thousands of files related to Project Paperclip, continues to redact sections mentioning plague research. The truth remains fragmented, stitched together only by historians, archivists, and the occasional defector willing to speak. To study Operation Harbinger is to confront a silence engineered by governments across multiple eras. Japan buried it to escape post-war accountability. The United States suppressed it to harvest its research. The Soviet Union concealed it to protect its own programs. And the victims, those who lived in villages reduced to numbers on a test sheet, were silenced by time, fear, and neglect. Yet the fragments that survive tell enough. Harbinger was not simply a theoretical plan. It was a near-deployed reality, one that could have rewritten the course of the war had Japan chosen to unleash it. That it was never used does not absolve its architects. Instead, it underscores how close the world came to an invisible catastrophe. Today, the name Harbinger survives only in scattered declassified documents, their pages yellowed and their lines punctuated with redacted blocks of ink. But the implications endure. It represents the moment when warfare sought to bypass bombs and bullets to reach directly into the bloodstream of its victims. It reminds us that beneath the surface of the Second World War lay weapons so insidious, so cruel, that their existence was denied not only for political reasons, but perhaps also to preserve the illusion of humanity in an inhuman age. Operation Harbinger remains a file half open, its full contents scattered, but its legacy whispered wherever plague still stalks humanity. Chapter 3. Stalin's hidden pact of repartition. In the official narrative of the Second World War, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of August 1939 is remembered as a cynical arrangement. Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union carving up Eastern Europe, condemning Poland, the Baltic states and Finland to invasion. Yet declassified Soviet files reveal that the story did not end with that infamous agreement. In the final desperate years of the conflict, as the Red Army advanced westward and the Third Reich staggered under Allied bombardment, another secret clause was drafted, one buried so deeply within NKVD archives that it remained invisible for half a century. Known as Directive Sever 12, this hidden pact outlined a staggering plan of repartition, one that proposed collaboration between collapsing Nazi divisions and Soviet handlers. According to Gestapo file number 17, recovered in Dresden among the ruins, trainloads of SS scientists and their technical archives were escorted eastward under the cover of night. Soviet documents suggest that Stalin himself sanctioned the bargain, trading sanctuary and secrecy in exchange for Germany's most advanced weapons research. If true, the Cold War arms race was seeded not just by captured equipment at Peenemünde, but by a silent handshake between sworn enemies, hidden beneath the ruins of a dying Reich. The first trace of Sever 12 appears in a Soviet memorandum dated October 1944, signed by NKVD chief Lavrentiy Beria. The document refers to negotiations of urgent scientific nature with enemy representatives in occupied territory. The wording is deliberately vague, but attached annexes list transport schedules for trains moving from Silesia to Minsk, guarded by Soviet units yet carrying German passengers. Cross-referencing these dates with German evacuation records reveals anomalies. Entire divisions listed as missing in action never appeared on casualty lists. Their officers, particularly those associated with rocketry and jet propulsion, vanished from Wehrmacht rolls in the winter of 1944. Western intelligence later accounted for some of these scientists within Operation Paperclip, but others were conspicuously absent. For decades, their fate was unknown. Sever 12 provides a chilling possibility. They were delivered not to American camps, but directly into Soviet laboratories. Gestapo file number 17 corroborates these movements in eerie detail. The file contains interrogation notes from an SS officer stationed near Dresden, who described overseeing convoys of sealed railcars, escorted by both Waffen-SS and Soviet soldiers. He recalled uniforms stripped of insignia, documents burned in barrels, and entire train stations cleared of civilians during the transfers. When asked what the trains carried, he responded only, "Men of value and their papers." The Gestapo investigator who filed the report labeled it treasonous contact and sealed it. Yet the file survived the destruction of Berlin, recovered decades later by archivists sifting through rubble-strewn basements. It is a rare fragment suggesting not only collaboration, but deliberate cover-up at the highest levels. What was the purpose of Sever 12? Soviet technical reports from the late 1940s offer clues. Within a few short years of Germany's defeat, the USSR unveiled rocket programs strikingly similar to the German V2. Engineers such as Sergei Korolev achieved rapid advances, yet internal notes acknowledge foreign materials of exceptional value. While Western historians long assumed these referred to captured documents at Peenemünde, the breadth of Soviet progress suggests a deeper source. In a restricted journal published by the Soviet Academy of Sciences in 1951, one entry references derivatives of G-model engines, terminology used by German scientists in late-war missile projects. The Soviet Union's acquisition of such data implies direct transfer, not battlefield capture. Sever 12 may have been the pipeline. Testimonies from defectors during the Cold War lend further weight. A KGB archivist who fled to the West in 1968 described entire German technical teams resettled in hidden facilities across Siberia, their identities erased. He claimed one such group worked on supersonic jet prototypes in Novosibirsk, their existence classified even from most party officials. Another defector, a former NKVD courier, recounted delivering crates labeled Peenemünde Archives to Moscow in early 1945, escorted by guards who spoke German among themselves. His account, dismissed at the time as exaggeration, now aligns disturbingly with the fragments of Sever 12. The most damning evidence lies in Soviet financial records. Wartime budgets include untraceable allocations to special settlements, coded as S-12 sites. These settlements, located deep in the Urals and Siberia, received surges of funding precisely during the months when Sever-12 transfers allegedly occurred. Their existence was long denied, but satellite reconnaissance in the 1960s revealed sprawling compounds that bore none of the features of ordinary military bases. Western analysts speculated they were gulags, but Sever-12 suggests something else. Secret enclaves where Nazi scientists, stripped of names and nationalities, continued their work under Soviet command. Western intelligence agencies were not blind to these possibilities. Declassified MI6 memoranda from 1947 discuss rumors of German engineering talent diverted east. American reports likewise noted the disappearance of certain key figures who never arrived in Allied custody. Yet both powers suppressed further investigation, perhaps fearing exposure of their own compromises. For while the Soviets may have absorbed Nazi expertise through Sever-12, the Americans were hardly innocent. Operation Paperclip openly transported Werner von Braun and hundreds of others to US soil, whitewashing their pasts in the name of progress. To accuse the Soviets too loudly risked drawing attention to similar sins. The secrecy surrounding Sever-12 was reinforced by deliberate erasure. Soviet archives contain orders for the destruction of certain wartime rail manifests, signed personally by Beria. Witnesses who questioned the transfers reportedly disappeared into prisons or labor camps. One German scientist, who escaped from a Soviet compound in 1947, attempted to contact Western intelligence in Vienna. His testimony, preserved only in fragments, describes underground laboratories where German engineers were forced to work alongside Soviet counterparts. Their families held hostage to ensure compliance. Before his debriefing could be completed, he was assassinated in a Vienna safe house. His file marked "Terminated." The message was clear: Sever-12 was to remain invisible. What makes the story most disturbing is not merely the existence of Sever-12, but its consequences. The Cold War technological race, missiles, jets, even early nuclear delivery systems, may have been fueled as much by Nazi collaboration as by indigenous Soviet or American innovation. Both superpowers, sworn enemies, built their arsenals on the bones of a collapsed Reich. Stalin's hidden pact ensured that the legacy of German militarism did not end in 1945, but lived on in silos and laboratories from Moscow to Washington. The irony is sharp. While millions celebrated liberation, the engines of future wars were being assembled in secret, driven by the knowledge of men who should have faced trial at Nuremberg. The final fragment of Sever-12 resides in a Soviet directive stamped with Stalin's personal approval. It reads simply, "Scientific acquisitions must be secured at all cost. The war ends, but the struggle continues." For decades, historians believed Stalin referred to post-war rivalry with the West. But within the context of Sever-12, his words take on another meaning. The struggle was not only ideological, but technological, and the price of that struggle was paid in silence, secrecy, and betrayal. The hidden pact of repartition was not drawn on maps of territory, but on blueprints of rockets, engines, and weapons designed to outlast empires. It was a pact not of land, but of knowledge, a currency as deadly as any bomb. Today, Sever-12 remains an incomplete puzzle. Many files were destroyed, others remain classified in Russian vaults. Yet enough fragments survive to suggest that Stalin's USSR did not simply inherit German weapons by conquest. It negotiated, collaborated, and absorbed them by design. The hidden pact of repartition stands as a reminder that the Second World War's end was not clean, not final, and not honest. Beneath the official treaties and public trials lay another war. A war of archives, laboratories, and railcars that rolled eastward in the night, carrying the future of conflict within their sealed compartments. Chapter 4. The Black Vault Beneath Himmler's Castle. The ruins of Wewelsburg Castle, nestled in the forests of Westphalia, are today little more than tourist curiosities, their stones weathered by decades of neglect. Yet beneath those ruins lies a story that official histories have long ignored. Wewelsburg was no ordinary fortress. Under Heinrich Himmler, it became the ideological and spiritual heart of the SS, a place where rituals of power and visions of conquest merged into statecraft. When US forces captured the castle in 1945, they found more than looted art and ceremonial relics. In sealed chambers below the North Tower, crates bore the Black Sun insignia, a symbol reserved for the SS's most secret endeavors. The contents, catalogued under US Army G2 intelligence as the Black Vault, included not only stolen treasures but encrypted ledgers of clandestine financial networks, documents detailing secret negotiations with neutral states, and chilling blueprints for underground weapons facilities scattered across Thuringia. The files were quietly classified, dispersed among CIA and Bundesnachrichtendienst archives, and never made public. What little is known comes from fragments that survived bureaucratic redaction, fragments that suggest the SS wove together occult ideology, financial conspiracy, and advanced weapons research in ways the Allies never dared to acknowledge openly. The physical setting of the vault reflected its purpose. Allied engineers described chambers cut deep into the bedrock, walls lined with heavy oak doors reinforced by steel. Torch brackets still clung to the stone, though electric wiring suggested more modern use. At the center of one chamber lay a marble mosaic of the Black Sun, polished smooth by the boots of men who had once circled it in ritual formation. Around it stood crates, some marked with the Reichsadler, others with coded insignia. US reports listed their contents blandly as documents or miscellaneous items, but a handful of uncensored notes reveal more. Account books tracking gold shipments through Swiss banks, correspondence between SS officials and industrial magnates in Sweden, and coded communications with sympathetic factions in Spain and Argentina. These were not the spoils of war, but the infrastructure of a network designed to outlast it. Financial historians have long puzzled over the mysterious disappearance of Reich assets in 1944-45. Billions in gold, art and industrial resources simply vanished from official ledgers. The Black Vault may explain where they went. One ledger, photographed by American officers before being classified, details transfers through Zurich intermediaries into shell corporations that persisted well into the Cold War. The ledger included names that resurfaced decades later in banking scandals, suggesting that the SS did not merely loot for personal enrichment, but constructed financial pipelines to fund escape networks and post-war influence. This system would later be known as Odessa, the clandestine network that spirited SS officers to South America. But the Black Vault reveals that Odessa was not improvised after the war. It was prepared in advance, mapped out within the ledgers hidden beneath Himmler's castle. Yet the vault contained more than ledgers. Among the crates were rolls of blueprints for vast subterranean facilities across central Germany. Codenamed Mittelwerk 2 and Schwarze Halle, these complexes were intended to expand the Reich's Wunderwaffe program beyond, V2 rockets into experimental aircraft and possibly even nuclear research. American engineers examining the documents noted unfamiliar reactor designs and references to Uran Machine B, suggesting that the SS pursued parallel atomic experiments outside the well-known Heisenberg program. The blueprints indicated tunnels dynamited shut before Allied advances, ensuring that physical evidence remained buried. When US forces attempted excavation in 1946, unexplained cave-ins halted the operation, and the effort was abandoned. Officially, nothing of importance was found. Unofficially, the Black Vault files were dispersed to Langley and Bonn, vanishing into classified silos. Perhaps the most disturbing discovery in the vault was a collection of ritual manuscripts annotated in Himmler's own hand. These texts, drawn from medieval grimoires and rewritten in SS script, outlined ceremonies intended to bind ideology to military action. One manuscript described initiation rites conducted within Wewelsburg's North Tower, linking the Black Sun mosaic to cosmic renewal through struggle. Another suggested that these rites coincided with strategic decisions, implying that the SS leadership intertwined occult ritual with state planning. While Western intelligence often dismissed Nazi occultism as fringe mythology, the Black Vault documents suggest otherwise, that Himmler and his inner circle integrated symbolic ritual into the very machinery of command. This fusion of ideology, mysticism, and military planning blurred the line between superstition and strategy, leaving behind a legacy as unsettling as it is difficult to categorize. Why were these files never made public? The answer lies in the Cold War. For the United States and West Germany, exposing the extent of SS financial networks risked undermining fragile post-war economies, especially as many former industrialists quietly resumed positions of influence. For intelligence agencies, revealing occult elements risked ridicule. distracting from the serious technological assets embedded within the vault. And for both East and West, the discovery of advanced blueprints raised questions better left unasked. How much of Nazi weapons research had been destroyed, and how much had already been carried into new arsenals? Thus, the Black Vault was sealed not just physically, but politically. Its revelations scattered across classified drawers in Washington, London, and Bonn. Yet fragments slipped through the cracks. In the 1980s, a former CIA officer leaked photographs of ledger pages to a German journalist, showing transactions between SS banks and neutral states. The journalist died in a car crash weeks later, his notes confiscated by police. In 1995, German excavators near Thuringia stumbled upon sealed tunnels matching the Schwarze Halle blueprints. They were ordered to cease work immediately. And in 2001, portions of the ritual manuscripts surfaced in private auctions, their authenticity confirmed by handwriting experts. Each incident points back to the vault, a reminder that its contents, though buried, continue to ripple through history. The Black Vault beneath Himmler's castle is not a singular story, but a nexus of interconnected threads. Financial conspiracies that ensured the SS's survival, blueprints that fed Cold War weapons races, and ritual texts that reveal the depths of ideological obsession. Together, they paint a portrait of an organization that did not intend to vanish with Germany's defeat. The SS prepared for a world beyond 1945, embedding itself in secret economies, shadow laboratories, and occult visions of destiny. The Allies uncovered the vault but chose silence, ensuring that much of what it contained remained hidden from public knowledge. Today, Wewelsburg stands as a hollow shell, a museum sanitized of its darkest chambers. Tourists walk its halls unaware that beneath their feet, crates once held the architecture of an alternative future. The Black Vault remains officially sealed, its files scattered and censored, but its implications endure. That the Reich sought immortality not just through conquest, but through networks designed to transcend defeat. And somewhere in those classified pages lies the reminder that the war's end was never absolute. Beneath Himmler's castle, the SS prepared for a future we were never meant to see. The files we have unearthed are fragments, torn from archives that were never meant to be opened, whispers preserved in the margins of history. A ghost convoy swallowed by Arctic waters, its cargo still poisoning the silence of Narvik Fjord. A plague weapon conceived in Manchuria, its strain absorbed into secret Cold War laboratories under new flags. A hidden pact drafted by Stalin's men, where Nazi scientists and blueprints traveled eastward under cover of night, fueling the missiles that later menaced the world. And beneath Wewelsburg Castle, a vault where Himmler's black sun glimmered over ledgers, weapons plans, and ritual texts designed to outlive the Reich itself. Each chapter reveals not closure but continuity. The war did not end in 1945. It mutated, concealed beneath bureaucratic seals and political convenience. Gold, germs, engines, and ideology all became currencies in a shadow war waged across decades. We are left with questions that refuse to die. How much of the convoy's cargo remains beneath the ice, corroding in silence? How far did Harbinger's plague files travel through the corridors of Fort Detrick or Biopreparat? How many railcars disappeared eastward, carrying mines and machines that built the Cold War's arsenals? And what network still draws strength from the Black Vault's ledgers, echoing into the present? These secrets remind us that history is not only written by the victors, but buried by them. In the silence between what was recorded and what was erased lies the forbidden story of a war that never truly ended, a war still pulsing beneath the surface of our world.